We've been hearing a lot about AI so far at Dublin Tech Summit, and you're going to get more on that right now. We've got a panel discussion about artificial intelligence in action. And to discuss that theme, I'm delighted to welcome Ben Taylor, co-founder and chief AI officer of Ziff, Swami Chandrasekaran, managing director of AI innovation and enterprise solutions at KPMG, David Ledbetter, senior data scientist of Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and we're welcoming back Cassie Kozyrkov, chief decision scientist at Google. The discussion will be moderated by Mark Kelly, chief customer officer at Alldus. Please put your hands together for our panel.
Hello, everybody. You're very, very welcome to this AI in Action session. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to share with you some practical applications and implications of AI. We're going to talk about how you actually go on the AI journey in getting the data ready and some of the pitfalls you need to be aware of. And then later we'll talk about some of the ethical considerations that the AI brings and something you need to be mindful for as well, too. So I'm delighted to be joined by Cassie. Cassie's come into our panel as well. We hadn't organized, but we couldn't take up the opportunity without actually asking Cassie to join. So absolutely delighted to have Cassie here. You've just seen her keynote. We've got Swami Chandra. Swami used to be the CTO of IBM Watson. He's now the MD of KPMG in Dallas. And we've also got David Ledbetter. David's a senior data scientist at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. And we've Ben Taylor, lead at Ziff.AI. And Ben is looking after some of the top AI companies in the world doing consulting services, among others. So let me give you a little bit of context about this. My name is Mark Kelly. I'm the co-founder of Alldus International, an AI and staffing agency with offices in Dublin, Berlin, and New York. And I'm also the founder of Artificial Intelligence Ireland, which is a not-for-profit set up to help build AI investment for Ireland and also help to bring the community together. And over the last year or so, I've conducted over 150 interviews with head of data scientists, chief data scientists, head of AI across the world, finding out what are the applications and implications of AI, and also advice that they would share to their younger self if they were to go into AI again and the journey that they did. And that was through the podcast AI in Action and AI Mentors, and these three gentlemen joined us on the show and they were sharing their insights. And today we want to share some of their learnings for you so that you can get away from the hype and actually see some of the applied benefits from a business perspective, but also if you're a data scientist or an aspiring data scientist, how you can get into this field and make a difference at what we're doing day to day. I'm going to start with yourself, Swami. For all the hype about driverless cars and the trolley problem and Terminator 2, tell us about some of the applied benefits to business that's actually making a difference and improving how people can become more effective.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So, good question. So AI is not science fiction anymore, right? Because it's getting very mainstream. The types of things you can do today was not possible until like a few months or years ago. So it really starts with what are you trying to do? So there are enough things you can start to automate. I mean, I live in a world where everything is boring in the back office, right? You have to deal with contracts and loan documents and invoices, but that's where the pain points are, and of course the money is there, because you have to run your business, you have to keep the lights on. So the benefits start to kick in when you start to look at what are some of the problems I can begin to automate. Where can AI be used in a very sensible way to solve those problems? At the end of it, automation could lead to, for example, better productivity. Humans can start to go focus on other things. You're able to find leakages, you're able to find more discrepancies and anomalies that can happen in the data that you're dealing with. So it all starts with what are my mundane tasks? Is there an opportunity to automate? And what are the sensible ways to start to apply AI? And the benefits and the rest of the things would follow after that.
So define the problem you're trying to solve. Don't just throw technology at it. Define the problem. For all those technologists, I know that might be hard to do. But give us some examples. Give us 2 or 3 examples as a business executive that you can improve my life day to day.
Yeah, I'll give you a few that I'm doing today. So one is for what is called contract lifecycle management. I'm pretty sure everybody in the room has signed some kind of a contract in their life, right? Whether you bought a home or you applied for a car, car loan or a home mortgage and whatnot. So multiply that by a few times when businesses have to deal with contracts. So when I'm dealing with the contract, I may have it with multiple vendors, which means I have to take a unstructured PDF document and be able to extract 25 things out of it to make sure I want to put that into a system, or I want to make sure there is no discrepancies with that same vendor with whom I may have 10 other contracts. So we are now talking about how do you automate the aspect of contract lifecycle management and take out inefficiencies in those. So that's one example. Another example could be around very simple, might look very simple but not trivial. I have HR systems, and if I'm a global company, I need to be able to translate content in my HR systems to 8 other languages. This is not your typical Google Translate. I have to deal with very, very domain-specific terms. I mean, how do I even translate the term maintenance engineer into German? Because German language, I don't know German, but I learned a few things. So that's another example of translating content, AI at play. Another one could be finding anomalies in my monthly financial closeouts. Are there transactions that are beginning to kind of emerge which are out of the ordinary that I may have to go fix in problem? Another one is building these intelligent agents and assistants for the enterprise. So the list goes on and on.
So it's the marginal gains that will automate tasks that just make people do more productive work and allow them to be more successful.
That's right.
Ben, I'm just going to come to yourself, Ben. Maybe some examples that you've kind of seen day to day as well.
Yeah, so we've learned this the hard way interacting with businesses, but one of our favorite questions now talking to executives is we like to ask them where their growth is bottlenecked by human capital. And this will sound maybe kind of evil, but our pupils dilate if they say, oh, right here, there's thousands of employees employed reviewing unstructured data. Then we get really excited. That's great. The joke is it's 2019, it's not 2001 anymore, and automating some of these tasks is much more doable. So examples of that would be any type of assessment. So if you're doing property assessments and insurance, if you're doing talent assessments on recruiting, we're seeing that more and more. Advertising assessments. So we'll come into an organization, we'll find where humans are bottlenecking an advertising discovery opportunity. And then with AI, not all the time, but we do see examples where we'll get superhuman performance. And it doesn't mean that humans got laid off. I think a lot of people assume that it would mean that, but yeah. So lots of opportunity, lots of industries. Unstructured data is the key thing.
Cassie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I just want to make a comment for those who are curious about AI, you're thinking about getting into it. There's a theme here that I really want to highlight. These are not one-off tasks. If it's a one-off thing, you do not want to do AI with it. If it's about decision-making under uncertainty for a very important one-off task, that is called statistics. That's classical, go and find a statistics textbook. That's the one that you want. It's when you have this repeated drudgery that you're going to want to consider this. In fact, I've got a little guided meditation to help you get inspired for finding AI use cases. I want you to imagine that this whole AI thing is a hoax. There is no AI, we're just pretending, and somewhere instead there's some island with humans in cubicles, millions of very fast humans, who are going to pretend to be the AI. You send them this document and they send you back the 25 things, or you send them a picture of a cat and they send you back cat. So they're just pretending to be AI. Never mind that, you get use of this resource. And you get to think about what you would use these humans for if you could have them for pretty much free. But, little constraint, they don't speak your language, so you cannot communicate with instructions. You must send them lots of examples, and that's the only way that they're going to learn to do your task. As you're thinking about tasks that you would send this island, what drudgery you would offload to them, you are coming upon the right tasks for AI, but wait. You don't know how drunk these people are. So, because of that, you're going to want to be able to check up on them and make sure that they do your task well enough, that they don't give you 25 nonsense things. So you're going to take a selection of work, and then you're going to have a look, do they actually perform the task well enough? Otherwise, you won't use them, you will solve the task some other way. So thinking about it as if it's a resource that is lots of people pretending to be AI can actually really help you find these tasks.
David, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing day to day in a children's hospital. As a parent, I can really relate that if your child goes into hospital, it's something that where you just do not want to be, and it's an experience that most parents just want to stay completely away from. Tell us about how you're applying data science that actually can make a difference to pediatric care.
So when I started at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, we invested a lot in the data to get that data ready so that we could use it, so that we could apply it in the clinical setting. And as a data scientist, the first thing I did was say, okay, I've got this data set, let me find some interesting problems to go work on. And really the first thing I learned was that was not the appropriate usage of my time, because I should be going to those domain experts, those clinicians, those boots on the ground, in the trenches, who day in, day out, see the problems that they're encountering as they're treating these kids, and what is it that they need? What is the information that they need access to? What do they need just simply automated away? What are problems that maybe are a little bit too complicated? There are too many different streams of data coming in at them, rapid fire. And so how can we take the tools that we have access to as data scientists and help them solve the problems that they actually care about on a day-to-day basis, which helps them, therefore, treat those kids better.
So this is a classic, right? And this, I also as a data scientist myself, I've had to train myself out of this. So AI researchers will start with the appliances. AI researchers will start with appliances, as per my keynote analogy. Data scientists will start with ingredients. Everyone should start with what do we want to serve. And as you learned, and as I learned, it's a habit you have to train yourself out of, because if your schooling always starts with the data, that's where you're going to want to start in real life, and that's not the best place to start.
Businesses want kitchens.
They do, yeah.
So you're talking about defining the problem, understanding the stakeholders, and who you're trying to help, and really having that empathy, design thinking, standing in their shoes. So tell us some of the applications of this, where there's an improvement to the child or from the parent's perspective.
So this is interesting, because as you were giving your analogy about an island of cubicles with people, a lot of the problems we try and work on are things where there are no people who could populate those islands. So for instance, one of the projects we work on was detecting heparin resistance in children. Heparin is an anticoagulant that prevents blood clots. There's lots of plastic lines going into and out of these children because we treat the sickest kids in the United States. But the thing is, when blood touches plastic, it clots. And all of a sudden, if these things are clotting, your drugs aren't getting in, your treatments aren't working, the blood's not circulating, and so you really need to prevent this. However, about 10% of the kids end up being resistant, but there's currently no bedside capability to determine who's going to be resistant. And so all of a sudden, we're able to come in, take more streams of data, simultaneously make educated decisions about who are the children that are going to become resistant, because there are alternative therapies. Sometimes they're a little bit more expensive, but if you now have someone saying, hey, I think this kid's higher risk, it's worth the alternative therapy, let's get this started earlier, we can make an impact earlier, and we can get better outcomes.
So that could be an example of a child going in and maybe having to wait 24 or 48 hours before they can take an antibiotic, because they have to see if they're resistant to it. But within a short period of time, you could have a better determination, say actually they can take the prescription and actually they can get better with that. So we've had some examples of applied AI, and we've also got it in healthcare, we've got it in business as well, which has been fantastic. Let's talk about the journey, because we all like the results. It's such an exciting time now because we've got real case studies coming to market where there's been impact. For a while there, we were just getting proof of concept. We've got case studies now. What's the journey like of getting the data ready, or the data munching, or the data janitor? And
Painful.
Thankful, right? Well, you spent 4 months getting that data ready. Maybe tell us a little bit about that journey and what companies need to be mindful for, because it's a pretty long journey to get right.
So I think we got lucky in one respect, which is CHLA's had EMR for a very long time. And so we knew going into this that we had probably one of, if not the best, pediatric ICU data sets in the world. And so we knew this was where our value was going to be reaped from. And so we knew that investing in this data set, this high fidelity clinical time series data of the most acute illnesses coming through the United States day in and day out, was where we were going to learn everything that we wanted to know in order to provide that information back to the clinical teams. And so we knew 100% this is the resource we need to invest in. And so because we knew that, it made it a very easy decision to say, okay, let's spend the time, work with the clinical team, understand exactly what's going on, every piece of the pie, so that we can do the munching right. We can figure out where are the erroneous values, where can we make changes, how do we get this data in the proper format such that we can use it rapid fire on as many projects going forward, so that we can very quickly turn things around and see real results. And then once you get those real results, all of a sudden that buy-in becomes so much easier day in, day out.
Yeah, so I went to a recent talk, and there was a quote that was said, and it stuck with me. It said that if you don't tag your data, Peter Griffin is a better data scientist than Einstein, because if the data is wrong, you're done. So it doesn't actually matter how you actually apply it. Ben, give us some of your experience with working with companies that get data right and the journey that they need to go on, and maybe some of the factors why most data science projects and AI projects, particularly IT projects, fail.
Yeah, so the data quality is, the data is usually disappointing, even if they've been labeling it, but the saddest experiences we've had is when you go into a company and you find out they've had hundreds of humans employed labeling things, doing that investment, but they haven't saved off the data, which sounds really dumb, but that happens more often than you think, that, oh, we were supposed to be saving that? Oh yeah, we've been doing that for 6 months or years. And so some companies, they're not ready to start AI projects because they haven't done that. And the way I like to look at it is you're getting a return on your human investment. The humans you've paid for have done a lot of work, but have you saved that work? And then with projects failing, I'm pretty pessimistic now. I feel like the vast majority of AI projects fail, 90%, and it's not because of technology. And I think I can already sense, interacting with people up here, that we all have scar tissue. And we've learned the hard way that we have to interact with a domain expert. We have to move away from being a technophile and celebrating the ingredients on the recipe. And a lot of people work on the wrong problems. And the wrong problem is something that you can't measure an ROI, like a short-term ROI.
So you said something to me today in passing. You said, for years, I used to blame senior management for the failure of projects. And you know, senior management is usually blamed for failing of projects or access to talent or access to data. But now you flip that. You say it's more on...
I blame myself now. So I used to blame senior management. When I worked at Intel and Micron, I couldn't get traction for these projects, and I was quite frustrating. And then for a startup I joined later, I sent the CEO some analysis, and he said, what the hell am I looking at? And there were slowly these awkward interactions where I realized I wasn't communicating. And these executives once you get insight into their lives are hell. They're dealing with 1,000 other priorities. They're not going to learn a statistic or some jargon. And so communicating is key, but communicating at their level, KPIs, ROI, revenue growth, cost reductions.
Yeah, to jump in on that, I think in general, data scientists are very STEMmy, very techy. Communication is not necessarily our strong suit. And it took me a really long time as, you know, an introverted STEM sort of person to learn that communication's actually a skill like any other. You can actually practice and improve your communication. And I would say probably 90% of data scientists have no idea that that's even a concept that exists. And so really the stratifying characteristic of data scientists, basically all of us can take, you know, a data set X, map it to Y, and get a pretty good AUC. But the ability to communicate at all levels between, you know, peers, domain experts, executives, just doesn't exist throughout this.
We've got one more point we want to get into at ethics, but do you want to add to that briefly?
Yeah, I was dying to say something. So, okay, data science, yeah? What is it? It's a discipline of making data useful. It has 3 subdisciplines in it. Statistics, one or a few important decisions under uncertainty. Those are the people who are going to tell you whether or not to launch your systems, check whether they work. Machine learning, AI, automation of lots of little decisions. And then statisticians should check it afterwards before you release the thing. And then the 3rd discipline, which is analytics. And analytics is one that I think is such a misunderstood discipline. Too many people think that it's like lame statistics or machine learning. Actually, if you notice about statistics and machine learning, they are the pursuit down a rabbit hole, solving a specific problem, automating a specific system with machine learning and AI, or testing a specific question with statistics. Where are you going to start digging is the question, right? If you just go right down a rabbit hole sort of randomly and then go mathematically carefully solve the wrong problem, nothing's going to save you. You need instead a way to take a quick, broad, shallow sweep to get inspired to figure out what to do next. And analytics gives you that. And an analyst is someone who is really good at speed. Speed not only of surfing your data quickly and figuring out what might be promising, but also speed in terms of the getting the insights into your brain and into the brains of the people that you're dealing with. So an expert analyst saves both of you. Expert analysts, though, tend to get kicks all the time, told, why don't you become a statistician or a machine learning person? They're underappreciated, they leave your business, and then it's your fault that you're down the wrong rabbit hole all the time. So really understanding these 3 professions and really appreciating experts in these 3 separate disciplines and putting all 3 of them to work is what's going to rescue you here.
So we've got 2 minutes to talk about probably a 3-week subject if we had time on it, AI ethics, right? So the famous one is the trolley problem, where if you could save 1 life versus 1,000 lives, who would you save? And autonomous cars might put us in this situation. But 1.4 million people die a year from road accidents. 30% of them are inattentiveness at the wheel. 5 or 6 people have died because of Uber accidents. And so there's a lot of different conversations with this. Ben, I'll start with yourself. Where do you think the conversation needs to have with ethics, with Microsoft, Google, SAP? They're all talking about this. Mark Zuckerberg was over recently talking about the importance of regulation. Where do you see it?
So ethics is a massive topic because there's so many verticals within ethics. My experience dealing with recruiting, protecting against bias, racism, sexism in the recruiting process, you will always have biased data coming from the humans. You can't protect against it, so you need algorithms that block that transfer. And there's straightforward ways to do that, but people that are caught off guard in the media, they're not thinking about it. So you have to be proactive.
I'll jump in with some Jeff Goldblum, and your data scientists were so busy wondering whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think whether or not they should.
So 5 years it takes usually to see the impact of a technology, right? So it can be long.
So my point is, you cannot be the judge, jury, and executioner. Asking a data scientist to certify their model is like saying, home builder, you certify your home and everything's go. So I'm actually driving a solution to do AI assessment, model assessment, and we look at 4 things. We look at a lineage of the integrity of the data, including the lineage provenance of where the data came from, who trained it. We look at fairness. Fairness could also creep in at runtime, so you need to have controls in place. Third is we look for explainability. Tell me, how did he come up with this result? And the last but not least, we also look at resiliency in terms of security. So it's not just about one thing, it's about different things. And you don't want, again, a data scientist self-certifying his or her model. You want somebody who's outside of that.
So we're kind of pushed for time, but Cassie?
Yeah, for me, it boils down to the decision maker at the end of the day. Think of it like this. Someone has to set the exam. Statistician makes sure that the exam is correctly scored. Who decides what we're trying to do, what we're achieving, and what should that exam be in the first place? Not specific questions, but like, is it basket weaving or calculus? That is the decision maker. And so when you ask the data scientists should think about whether they should, not just whether they can. That's the wrong job role. That's you expecting data scientists to also be decision makers. And that's great when they transcend. They just don't transcend very often, so maybe you want to hire and dedicate a trained, skilled decision maker to your project.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for the panel. If you'd like to listen to any of the podcasts that the guys are on, they're at AI in Action, AI Mentors, which can be found on Spotify and iTunes. I'd just like to do a round of applause for the guys today.